You're allowing them to do the majority of the speaking. You're guiding them along the way by interjecting these open-ended questions, by using mirroring and labeling and silence, and you're guiding them along the path toward that desired outcome, but you're wanting to make them feel listened to, you're wanting to make them feel understood, and you're wanting to allow them to arrive at the destination as if they were the guide the whole time. Well, hello and welcome. Today we have an installment of our book review series where you'll learn 7 lessons from some of the most impactful books out there. Today we are taking a look at Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. At first glance, you may think that this is a book with hard negotiation tactics fit for salespeople or CEOs or entrepreneurs, but this book is more a manuscript for how to effectively handle conversations in general. So anybody that you might be speaking with, whether that's a significant other, a coworker, a family member, a boss, an employee, this book prepares you to effectively and efficiently navigate those conversations. Jumping right in with lesson 1 is mastering the art of asking open-ended questions. So most often when you're speaking with somebody, you'll find that you ask these questions where the only applicable answer is usually yes or no. So you might say, do you like our product? Do you want to purchase our product? Do you want to go to this specific restaurant for dinner? And while these questions will get answered in and of themselves with a yes or no, they prevent you from gathering more information that you otherwise could if you asked a more open-ended question. So the best way to think about this is asking questions that begin with the words what or how, because these types of questions require the answerer to elaborate, to provide more information. So you may say, for example, what are you in the mood for eating tonight? What do you think about this restaurant? In a business scenario, you may say something along the lines of, what do you think of the pricing for this project? What budget did you have outlined for this initiative? These questions provoke much more thoughtful answers, and in the process, you gather information that you can use to further the conversation and move it toward a desired outcome. Lesson 2 is using the tactic of mirroring. So as the name would suggest, mirroring is where you read back a portion of your counterpart's statement, and you do it in more of an inquisitive manner. And what this forces them to do is to rephrase what they've said, to say it in another way, in a different context, to help clarify it to you. And again, in the process, you gather more information. So if in a business setting, somebody says, the product is really just too expensive, or maybe they say the product is really just more than we're wanting to spend, you would say back, more than you're wanting to spend. And in doing so, they're going to need to further clarify. Well, yeah, we had a budget of $2,500 a month, and this is $3,000 a month. Obviously, this is a hypothetical example, but they're going to give you more information than if you had just said, okay, when they told you that statement. So this tactic of mirroring forces them to say it another way, and in the process, you gather much more information. Lesson number 3 is labeling emotions or elephants in the room during a conversation. So let's say you're chatting with your significant other and you notice that they're clearly frustrated about what you're talking about. You could choose to ignore that and to try to proceed with the conversation without it, and you may still end up getting to a result, but it's likely that any unchecked emotions or any elephants in the room that don't get addressed can hinder that conversation. They can cause frustration and prevent you from getting to an outcome that works for both parties. So labeling the emotion is essentially a non-confrontational way of bringing that to the surface so that you can address it, so that you can overcome it, and then you can move on in a much more productive manner. So for example, you might say, it sounds like this process of picking a restaurant is frustrating. And that opens the door for them to bring forth what they're feeling and to specify what's frustrating them. Or maybe in a business setting, you might say, It sounds like we're not on the same page here about the best path for implementation. Again, this gives the ability to bring it into the light, to face it head on, to deal with it, and in successfully dealing with it, you will either A, determine that it's not a good fit, or B, determine a path that works well for both sides. Lesson number 4 is the importance of silence. So perhaps you've just asked somebody an open-ended question, or you've done a mirroring or a labeling tactic. In conversation, silence is really critical, and this is something that you'll probably find to be very uncomfortable at first. We have this saying, awkward silence, right, where we say that anytime nobody's speaking, it just kind of feels weird. And obviously, there may be some scenarios where nobody knows what to say, and that can be a bit strange. But the context of this book is really talking about times where most people will want to fill that space, that quiet, just because they're uncomfortable or they're unsure of themselves. So perhaps you've asked a difficult question about pricing for a business project, and maybe you're unsure or you're uncomfortable asking it, and you're a little bit afraid of what they might say. You may ask the question and then immediately start rephrasing it, start answering it for them, making these assumptions. One, this prevents the person you're speaking with from having the time to think through and provide that much needed answer, but it also gives the illusion that you're not confident in what you're offering or in what you're saying, right? This doesn't even have to be in just a business context. It can be in personal relationships as well. You want to maintain the illusion of a high status in a conversation, that you're confident in what you're portraying. And so having the ability to sit back, to take a deep breath, and to let the silence ride really shows that. Lesson number 5 is differentiating between hearing and listening, right? A lot of times in conversation, you might find that while the person that you're speaking with is saying something, you're not really fully paying attention to what they're saying. You're formulating what you're going to say next. You're trying to have that next sentence prepared. That way you can deliver it nicely, right in line with the conversation, with no gaps, with no awkward silences, right? And while this may help you be prepared for what you're going to say, it's not helping you empathetically listen to what the other person is saying. And this is really important for a couple of reasons. First, if you're engaging in a conversation, naturally, we all want to really understand and to feel what the other person is saying. We want to make them feel like we're listening to them, like we're paying attention to them. So we want to be actively listening for the benefit of that other person. But then the second reason is that you may miss information that's important if you're not paying attention. If you're just kind of barely listening to what they're saying and you're not really understanding it and you're not really internalizing it, you may miss something that could be useful to the conversation. Again, not just in a business conversation, but even a conversation with your significant other or a family member or a friend. This, again, is something that may be a bit uncomfortable at first, but the idea is to become comfortable with fully listening to what they're saying, to not really thinking about a reply as they're saying it to you. And once they have finished, being okay with the fact that you may need a few moments of silence, like we talked about in the last lesson, before you have crafted a reply and delivered it to them in return. Lesson number 6 is more of a small lesson, and it's pretty straightforward, but that is to be ultra specific with your requests. As human beings, we tend to round down or round up to the nearest whole number. So if you were asking for a salary on a job, you might say, that you want to get paid $75,000 or $100,000 or $150,000. If you were negotiating the price for a car, you might say that you don't want to spend more than $20,000 or $22,000 or whatever it may be. And Chris Voss teaches in the book to be ultra specific. So maybe you would say, I'm looking to be paid $123,658, or the most that I'll pay for that car is $19,873. And what this does is it gives the illusion that you have very meticulously planned out and ran all of the numbers in great detail, and that you arrived to this ultra specific number in that format. And what this does is the person you're speaking with picks up on this level of planning, on this level of decisiveness, and they really start to feel that that number you've laid out is really a line in the sand that you've drawn. They end up respecting it more, and they end up taking it a lot more seriously in the process. So even if you haven't done all of this elaborate planning to come to it, it gives off that vibe, they pick up on it, and then it ultimately helps you reach the outcome that you're looking for. And it's similar to something the entrepreneur and speaker Ed Milet has said, that we tend to do this with time as well. So all of our meetings are a half hour exactly or 60 minutes exactly. They always start on the hour or on the half hour. And he suggests being even more specific with lengths of meetings, with starting times, that it's okay to have an 18-minute meeting that starts at 11:40 a.m., for example. And again, when you show that level of detail, that level of being specific, other people pick up on that and they start to respect it accordingly. And lesson number 7 is more of a mindset to embody as you embark on your journey through conversations and through negotiations. A lot of times, you may get the impression that negotiation has to be this win-lose scenario where one person comes out victorious and the other person loses, and that it's this cutthroat battle all the way through. And in reality, Chris Voss explains that that's not the scenario, that the person you're speaking with is actually your counterpart, not your enemy, that you are working together with them to reach an outcome that's good for both sides, whether it be you finding a place to eat with your significant other or you negotiating a large deal for your company. The idea is to work with them to reach an outcome. And he furthers that by saying that your ultimate goal is to help lead your counterpart, the person you're speaking with, to reach the desired outcome that you're wanting as if it was their own idea. So rather than you just speaking at them the whole time and saying, this is what we're going to do, this is what we need to have done, instead, you're allowing them to do the majority of the speaking. You're guiding them along the way by interjecting these open-ended questions, by using mirroring and labeling and silence, and you're guiding them along the path toward that desired outcome, but you're wanting to make them feel listened to, you're wanting to make them feel understood, and you're wanting to allow them to arrive at the destination as if they were the guide the whole time. And so this really will lower the pressure for conversation and for negotiating, and take some of the fear away from it. Because ultimately, it is just that. It's a conversation, but one where you're more intentional and where you're setting out to achieve a desired outcome. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of our book review series on Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. I truly hope that these lessons are impactful and inspiring to you on your journey. If you have any follow-up questions, if you have any further thoughts, if you have any other tips or tricks or pieces of knowledge that you can share, please do so down in the comments. That way we can help the whole community, everybody watching the video. Again, thank you for your time and attention today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.